Chciałbym teraz przywitać
Now I'm
gospodarza
giving
naszego
the
spotkania,
floor
Konrada
over to the
Wajskiego, prezesa
meeting,
Spyro. Dzień dobry.
to the board, and
Dzień
let
dobry.
them Konrad
Sebastian Łękawa, członek zarządu
Weiske,
odpowiedzialny za
CEO,
operacje.
Dzień dobry.
Sebastian
Wojciech
Łękawa,
Bednarz, członek
COO,
zarządu
and
oddziału
Wojciech
Zakinazy. Dzień dobry.
Bednaruś, CFO.
Prezesie, oddaję
Good
głos.
morning.
Widzimy się
Over
już
to
następnej
you,
wypowiedzi.
Mr.
Dziękuję
President,
bardzo.
and
Witam
I'll see you at the
Państwa w
Q&A session.
sessionie
Thank you very much, and
prezentacji wyników za
welcome to the
2025
presentation of the
rok
results for
oraz
2025
wytycznej naszej
and
strategii
a
na
quick
najbliższe lata.
explanation of our
Patrząc na nasze wyniki za
strategy for the upcoming
2025
years.
rok,
Looking
jak
at our
Państwo
results for
widzą,
2025, as you
firma
can see, the
urosła
company has grown
około 29
by roughly
o poziomie
30%
przychody.
when it comes to
Ten
revenues.
wzrost w czwartym
That
kwartale był nieco słabszy.
increase in Q4 was slightly
EBITDA
slower.
wzrosło
EBITDA
bardzo
grew
podobnie do przychodów tak naprawdę,
very
ale
similar to
w
the
czwartym kwartale
revenues
wzrost
indeed, but
EBITDA
in
był
Q4,
nieco
the
szybszy.
EBITDA
Jest
growth
to związane
was
z kilkoma
slightly
czynnikami.
quicker. This
Jest to
involved
tak,
several
że w pierwszym
factors, the
półroczu
main one being that in the first part
2025
of
mieliśmy
2025,
zawirowania na rynku
we had
automotive,
some
musieliśmy
turmoil
przełożyć
in the automotive
współpracę w tym
market. We had to
segmencie
switch to a
na
different mode of
inwestycje
cooperation in this
szczególniejsze.
segment, and
Teraz ten segment
we had a
wzrosł.
transitory,
Mamy
smaller
inną koncepcję
EBITDA. Right
współpracy
now,
z
we're out of the woods. We have a different
podmiotami.
concept of cooperation
To
with
skutuje
different
zwiększeniem
entities, and this
również
results in
dochodów
increasing the EBITDA.
podstawowych.
Also, the EBITDA margin, percentage-wise, as you can
Wyniosła
see,
12%,
amounted to
12,5,
12%,
ale w czwartym
adjusted
kwartale
EBITDA
widać, że
12.5,
już
but
jest
in Q4 you can see
znacząco większa
that
niż
it's
w czwartym
significantly
kwartale ubiegłego
higher than in Q4
Inne kluczowe
2024.
fakty to, tak jak Państwo
Other
pewnie z tego
key
wynika,
factors,
jesteśmy grupą
as
spółek
you will, or key fact, as you know, you were
zaawansowaną
a
i te
highly
dywersyfikacje
diversified
zauważamy,
group,
widać w
and
momencie, kiedy
this
jeden segment
diversification can be seen
znacznie gorzej
the
robi.
moment one of the
Patrząc,
segments
jak dzisiaj
is
dywersyfikujemy,
doing
to
worse.
Państwo może
We
już
keep
wiedzą,
diversifying, as you
jesteśmy
will
jednym z
know.
nowych segmentów, takich jak
We've added
defense
some
czy
new
AdTech. Branża informatyczna
segments such as
znajduje się
defense
obecnie
or
w
ad tech.
okresie tak
Generally,
zwaną
the IT
przejściowej stabilizacji.
uh,
Jest to
the IT
wprowadzenie dużej
industry
części
is in the
regulaminów
transitory
makroekonomicznymi,
stabilization
odpowiednio myślących
phase.
firm.
This involves
Te
some
zawirowania i
macroeconomic
zależności
and
cła
geopolitical
na pewno sprawią,
factors.
że sytuacja
Definitely,
stabilna nam
the
nie
tariffs
pomaga,
did
dlatego
not
żeby
help, and
części
the
tworzą
unstable
większość
global
przychodów,
situation
mamy
is not exactly helpful
współpracę z firmami, które
because
chcą
many of our
inwestować w przemysł,
revenues
który jest
are derived from
pewnym, niebezpiecznym.
entities that wish to invest.
Wiadomo,
And
jakie
in a
pieniądze
world
padły,
that is uncertain,
inwestycje jest
not
naturalnie
very
nieco
safe,
mniejsze. Natomiast
the appetite for investment is
popyt nastąpił.
slightly less,
To jest
but
ta faza przejściowej
the demand
stabilizacji.
for IT
Ona
is at
powinna
a
się zmienić w
constant level, and
fazę
this is the partial
przechodzenia do nowych modeli
stabilization.
biznesowych, które
This stage
umożliwione
should
przez
pass on to passing on
szybszy
to different new
evolution
business models enabled
technologicznych
by
metod i
AI.
pracy. Mamy swoje
We've been investing
rozwiązania,
in AI for many years. We have our own
gotowe
solutions. We also have
biznesowe.
pilots of
Dlaczego o
new
tym za dużo
business
mówić, bo uważam, że
solutions. I hate to
najczęściej
talk about it too
tajemnicy
much
firmowej
because I consider it part of our
nieprzeniknione.
business
Natomiast
secret
wyglądają te nowe modele
and competitive
biznesowe, nowe
advantage.
piloty
But
obiecująco,
those new pilots look
ale
promising,
myślę, że jest to kwestia dopiero
and
kilku lat,
I
kiedy
guess it's
te
only
pieniądze
a
zaczną
matter
się
of several years where that impact will be more pronounced.
Liczba klientów,
The number of
tak Państwo wiedzą, zyskujemy
clients,
nowych klientów.
as you
Wcześniej
know, we acquire new
dla
clients.
których wykonaliśmy pracę przejściową na
Also, the
odchodząc,
number of
mówimy, że
some of the clients we've
chcą do
performed
nas
work for
powrócić. Natomiast w
um,
2025
leave
roku
us for a
obsługiwaliśmy
moment to come back
318
later,
nowych klientów.
but
Zespół również nam się
in
rozrósł.
total in
Niestety góry nie
2025, the
ustały.
group was
Musieliśmy się
serving
pożegnać z względu na te
818. The
transformacje w
team
branży automotive. Natomiast to, że my jesteśmy
count
firmą,
was
którą nasi
1,932
pracownicy
people. We had to
rozwijają nowe
say goodbye to
przedsiębiorstwa,
some
sprawia,
people,
że
but since we're a company
liczba
that
pracowników
keeps
na miesiąc
growing
wzrosła, natomiast
and
częściowo
adding new specialties,
fakt, że
also
ten
the
wzrost się
headcount
utrzyma
has
na
increased, but it's
obecnym
hard to
poziomie. Podejrzewam, że
expect
będziemy
for that
kiedyś zatrudniać
growth
więcej
to be
ludzi, ale to jak
at a high
artyfikacja
level.
bez
I
odgrywania
presume we
kluczową
will
rolę.
be hiring new
Wracamy
people,
do
but as
przejmowania
AI takes
technologicznych
over,
modeli właśnie
some of the work will be
zachodzących
taken over
technologicznych.
by AI agents.
Natomiast ławka nam się znacząco
However, the
przyspieszyła.
bench has
Utrzymujemy
shrunk
na poziomie około
significantly. We maintain
2%,
it
ale
at
myślę, że
the
ten
level
poziom powinien
below
się utrzymać.
2%, and I think
Związane
that
to
level
jest z zatrudnianiem
should be maintained. This
coraz większej
involves
ilości freelancerów.
hiring a
Są to osoby,
larger
które
number of
wykorzystują na
freelancers.
potrzeby
These are
projektu,
people who are
który jest
hired for the
realizowany.
purposes
Jeżeli
of a project.
jest
Once the
kontynuowane, to współpracujemy z
project
takimi
is
osobami.
accomplished,
Jeżeli nie, to nie.
if the
Najczęściej są
project
to
is
osoby,
pursued,
które
then the
realizują nasze bardzo kluczowe
cooperation is continued. If not, then we part ways. We have a dedicated team of people who only deal with that, enabling us to reduce the bench cost. The number of employees increased, but it will be maintained at a roughly stable level with a growing role of AI agents. But it's a perspective of several years. It's not that it will happen in a couple of quarters. When it comes to our geographic presence, it hasn't substantially changed. We are present, as you can see, on several continents, and this is the presence that we intend to maintain. Following some acquisitions, some new countries might be added, but we will talk about our strategy later on. As I mentioned, we're a group of companies that are highly diversified, and this diversification will be continued. We'll be adding new segments that will make us even more stable. As we look at our peer group, close peer group, you can see that with the exception of perhaps Progress Software that coped particularly well, we can see that compared to our peers, we look definitely better. When it comes to financials, I'll give the floor over to Wojciech. Thank you, Konrad. So as Konrad mentioned, the group revenues amounted to 601 million and increased by almost 30%. This increase was mostly attributable to such sectors as media, entertainment, high-tech software, Industry 4.0, manufacturing and financial services, which shows a substantial diversification of our business. As Konrad mentioned, the bench is systematically shrinking year on year. The challenging geopolitical situation limited some investments, but we're doing good against that backdrop. When it comes to our revenues in the context of the strategy whose development we've completed, and Konrad will be developing that on the later slides, we can see that we surpassed our expectations, and that's what we also expect from us in the upcoming years. When it comes to the EBITDA, it amounted to 70 million zlotys, which represents a year-on-year increase of almost 27%. EBITDA margin was 12% against 12.2 in 2022, but it's still within the brackets assumed for 2022-26. This reflects the fact that the overall costs were kept at a stable level, despite the difficulties in the automotive sector in H1 and costs incurred. The adjusted EBITDA represented 12.5%. When it comes to the impact of Forex, we can see that Forex is disadvantageous, where 83% of revenues are from other markets than Poland. We had a drop on the GBP and USD and a very stable situation on the euro. And I'd like to tell you how we cope with this, other than hedging with the help of forward and window forward contracts. In each new project, if possible, and this is changing. When it comes to freelancers, we conclude contracts with freelancers in the currencies which stem from the cooperation with the customers. So in the long run, this will mean that those fluctuations will be even less, and it will be another tool helping us to mitigate that risk. When it comes to the net profit, it was almost 41 million and was 18.9% higher year on year. This stemmed from such factors as The previous results were was a tax relief, um, and as I mentioned, mostly Q4 will have the greatest impact on the net result because that's when we apply for the return of the tax relief. When it comes to an overview of the income statement, as we compare one year with another, we can see that a lot was going on here. Myself and Konrad kept emphasizing that in H1 we grappled with the automotive industry, but the guys kept up to the level and coped very well. And as you can see, that the increase looked very good. Additionally, we should pay attention to the fact that the cost of general management and sales, the overheads and sales costs grow slower than the revenues, which we keep informing you about. But however, Q4 was quite idiosyncratic because we were joined by the Caramus Group, so you still don't see the synergies of the joint back office. Additionally, we recognize several provisions for the first time connected with the audit, which also meant that the costs increased on the same way as the business, but these were one-off factors stemming from Q4's one-off events, essentially. And now I'm giving the floor over to Sebastian. Okay, here we can see the structure of the revenues split by sectors, percentage-wise. The largest sectors where we're present are media entertainment, automotive, high tech, and software industry and manufacturing and financial services. They represent a vast majority of the revenues in most sectors. We've observed increases. On the next slide, you can see the split into industries calculated in absolute figures in millions of zlotys. I'd like to emphasize one thing, which I mentioned before, that part of the robotics were transferred to the chemicals business unit, where the company started operating and where it's doing really good. Hence, in robotics, you can see a decrease in revenues, and I've mentioned the automotive already. I won't be repeating myself. We faced some challenges connected with the situation with the industry in H1 2025, but we coped with it very nicely in H2. When it comes to the geographies, the largest market where we are present is the UK market, then the German-speaking countries, the US, and Poland. And here I'd like to emphasize that we're talking about Q4 and 2025. We still don't see our latest acquisition in consulting, and hopefully the German-speaking market will be following the UK market soon. When it comes to the prospects, alluding a little bit to what I said before, the key markets where the company is present is the UK, the German and German-speaking countries, broadly understood. In the previous meetings, we also emphasized the fact that we are looking for a target to acquire in India, owing to the technological changes in the market and the AI roles, as well as the fact that from our perspective, it's more important to be closer to the customer. We've decided not to continue the process of seeking a target company in India. We addressed this need on our own by developing Indian structures on our own. And at this moment, we don't intend to continue the process of seeking a target company in India. We'll be focusing more on Western Europe and the US. When it comes to AI, I'd like to say a couple of words about AI. When it comes to AI, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions about this, but as you will know, the rate of growth is tremendous. And in our group, actually, we use AI-based solutions practically everywhere. In the process of coding software, it made that we are actually transferring to agentic software development where the agent is not performing the task but assumes the responsibility in many aspects. It even makes its own decision. The effect is that the amount of the engineer's work in the process of developing software is decreasing. This also implies a connection with the fact that what we see and what will be happening going forward in the industry is that the increase in revenues will not be directly proportionate to the increase of the team count, which means that to increase your revenues, you won't have to hire more people because the role of a person will be taken over by the agent. It won't eliminate people altogether, of course. When it comes to the prospects for the upcoming quarters in the context of the sectors, here we can see that financial services stand out, and we will be able to tell you more about it in the next meetings. Also, industry, robotics, retail, e-mobility, renewables, energy, and defense. And in the remaining sectors, the situation is roughly stable. I'd like to comment on the arrow slightly tilted towards the right in the media. As you can see, as you know, the company serves BBC very largely. It's doing good. Everything is all right, but when it comes to the level of demand for the next quarter, it's slightly lower. Nothing bad is happening, but the dynamics will not be as high as in the previous quarters or for years, actually. We were aware of that, and this is aligned with our expectations. Thank you.
Strategia, tak? No to
Now, time for the strategy.
Okej, dziękuję ślicznie. W poprzedniej strategii
In the previous strategy,
wspominaliśmy,
we mentioned
w jaki sposób
how
będziemy
we would
w dalszym ciągu grupy.
be
I
growing
jeżeli
the
chodzi
group
o
going forward.
jakby sam sens naszego
And
działania,
when
on
it comes to
został
the
trochę
sense
zmodyfikowany
of our
poprzedniej
actions,
Natomiast
it has only
można
slightly been
powiedzieć,
modified
że
by
jakby strategia następowała
AI,
w
but
zakresie
you
tego, co
can say that
zamierzamy
the
osiągnąć,
strategy is similar in the context of
szybciej,
what we intend to
ściśle
do, except that we
rozwiązaniami, które
intend to do it quicker,
pomogą
and AI
ponieważ
is
od
helping us
prawie samego
in this
początku
respect.
istnienia firmy byliśmy
Since
zorganizowani
practically since the inception of the company,
wertykały
we were
odpowiadania
organized
za
into verticals
klienci.
that correspond to what our customers are doing. We've accumulated a lot of knowledge in some areas. Now we will be implementing that, and we can feed our agents with it to be able to perform the projects for our customers quicker and more successfully for them. I'm sure that we will be diversifying geographically and industry-wise. This is connected with the fact that the new business model, which is result-oriented, subscription model-oriented with a lot of AI involvement, requires a lot of human factor, but in a different scope, not in such locations which provide good cost conditions, but where we have that are advantageous from the customer presence perspective. This is getting more important. And when it comes to M&A, our M&A strategy, this means that we'll be seeking new customers, new target companies who are closer to a customer to be able to grow them and provide our services with them. Our growth markets are still the UK, USA, and DACH, but I wouldn't exclude the fact that other markets that are less key, if we find a company that is worth our attention, we'll try to invest in it. Our strategy is based on the 6 pillars that I'll discuss soon. These pillars are something that we call talent as a service. This is historically what we started off with. We have such services there as Gene Extension, Build to Operate, Transfer. These are services that are more of an HR than IT nature. And these are such services where you could expect for the demand for them to be growing because of replacing employees by AI, but it's not our case. This is not what's happening in our case. So I think that the interest will be maintained at a high level for a good couple of years, but in a sense, we will eventually pass on to the model where AI agents will be performing the majority of programming work, but it's a perspective of several years. The next pillar of the system are technology ecosystems. This is connected with the integration. These are both cloud-based solutions as well as Salesforce implementation. We will definitely be growing this segment. Also, owing to the fact that we started cooperation with OpenAI, Anthropic, the solution providers that will be definitely defining our future in a way, but since the market is not uniform and the AI adoption is not the same in all the industries and all the regions, all the areas of application, we'll definitely go for a partnership with companies that have ready solutions that can be used with slight customization. The third pillar is custom software development. That's a major proportion of what we do. It consists in the fact that a customer contacts us, they have some business need, and we develop software that takes care of that need. This is the sector that will mostly be affected by AI-related changes. These changes occur at 3 levels, if I may frame it that way. The first level is by coding, which enables us to better interact with the customer, quicker development of specs. The customer can even prepare the specs by coding some issues. The next issue is software development supported by AI solutions, as provided by Anthropic or OpenAI. If you find a place, we often get the question whether AI is a threat or an opportunity for our industry. It's both, actually, both an opportunity and a threat. If we look at the model where we have the largest threat for our company, this is the custom software development segment. These are such projects we will be definitely passing on to a model where AI will be performing a major proportion of the work. This is a major threat, but it will be spread over a couple of years, since, as in every industry, not every industry adopts AI so quickly. In some industries, or for some customers, for startups, it's just a flash, and in some more conservative industries, automotive, finance, and defense, the adoption is much slower. This will be spread over time, and we'll have to replace the gradual decrease in the revenues from this pillar by and by. Then we have the public sector, which is quite conservative by nature when it comes to AI adoption. And this is also a sector that we intend to focus on over the next couple of years. We have good prognostics so far. You may have noticed that we recently published the information that OS, one of our key customers, has decided that our proposal was the most attractive for them. We haven't signed the contract yet. It's another stage, but we have a yes. The next issue is own IP solutions and licensing, something that we've done to a limited degree so far. So far, it was done by only one company, which is part of our group. Currently, each of our groups owns its own IP, which for which it issues licenses. And we'll have more and more of that. Since we have industry specialization, we understand what the customer needs. Owing to that IP, we can develop solutions quickly, implement it, adjusting it to the customer needs. And AI, as such, as the technology progresses, will be able to offer new business models. AI will be mostly replacing the pillar which is called custom software development. Because so far, if a customer comes to us, it takes months, let's say half a year, and it can cost them 1 million to perform a project for them. Owing to AI in its numerous forms that we will not be discussing in detail, we will be able to develop, to pursue such a project within weeks or even days in some cases, and we will be able to develop that project, that product, host it, ensure support and security, all sorts of data access, for instance, for substitution models. And it is a challenge for a company because the new model will probably result in smaller revenues from the customer. So the revenues will be lower, the margin will be higher, and hence we will need a larger number of customers to replace the customer software development with new revenues. But please pay attention to the fact that as software becomes cheaper, the demand for it will be growing. So there will be more entities in such countries as Poland that could not afford custom software so far, and now they will be able to afford it. Now, this is more of a guess game than facts, but it's highly probable that that's the way we will be growing. Now, another issue that we've assumed in our strategy is strategic access to capital. In the previous version, we had the information that one of the key variants contemplated was an IPO at a major international stock exchange. This is still an option, but we will probably be going for private offers, private markets. We've decided that public, large companies don't meet that criteria, and it would probably not be a good option. Therefore, we are moving towards private markets by virtue of the fact. We have 3 years to pursue that strategy as we describe it in it. The financial goals remain unchanged because the financial goals apply for the previous strategy 2022-26. When it comes to financial goals, we will be presenting them closer to the end of this year. So right now, the previous strategy goals apply EBITDA at within the bracket from 11 to 14% and the revenue growth as assumed here. And as Wojtek was presenting, we are meeting those actually with some extra. And when it comes to the consolidation, we plan to consolidate shareholdings in the group depending on the EBIT levels in 2027. Thank you very much for your attention, and you're welcome to ask your questions. Yes, Mr. President, gentlemen, thank you very much for guiding us through the presentation and the strategies. I can see there are some questions, so I invite you to keep writing them down and putting them in the Q&A window. We'll try to ask all the questions of the board. The first question from Mr. Staniszewski, Stockwatch portal. Can you please precise what the new method of cooperation with the automotive customers looks like and how you perceive your cooperation with them in 2026? I'll take this question. Let's take a look historically how the cooperation what it looked like. So first we had car manufacturers, then we had tier one suppliers and then lower tier. So we historically cooperated with tier one. That was ZF, for instance. As you know, we pursued contracts with such companies, and they will not be rather extended or not to such a degree because the industry is changing. Right now, car manufacturers cooperate with platforms that provide out-of-the-box solutions, and we had to reorient that cooperation with tier ones that are not doing very good to car manufacturers as well as companies that develop platforms that are used by car manufacturers. So instead of cooperating with this segment, we are cooperating with those companies directly and the ones further below, because the segment in the middle is a little bit almost being eliminated. Now, the second part of the question, what we expect for 2026, I have a good sentiment when it comes to the automotive for this year. Mr. Staniszewski, once again, what do you understand by giving up the M&A intent in the Indian market owing to technological changes? Do you, colloquially speaking, do you believe that AI will eliminate Indian IT staff? I wouldn't define it in such a way. It's a question of what we need more. It's not that we believe that India is a wrong place. We have more and more employees from that part. Those people are very competent, and their revenues are also attractive. It's more about priorities. A larger priority is what will happen in the long run rather than in 4 years' time. So we want to be closer to the customer. If we want to be closer to the customer, especially in highly developed countries, we can safely assume that they will stay as developed countries and at the age of AI. Many things are uncertain. If someone is certain something will happen, they're most likely wrong. We have to make a bet on what's certain. And what is certain is being closer to the customer, speaking their language, both natural language and technological language, and providing advisory services in that respect. So this is of key importance. So we want to acquire a company with a lower price base, because the chances are that the latter model will be more and more predominant. I don't want to make any assumptions whether the AI industry will die in India owing to AI. I don't think so. India, as such, is also a fantastic country. Probably in a couple of years' time, this country will be attractive to offer our services in.
Patryk Stańczak, czy ze względu na wzrost świadomości klientów odnośnie rosnącej
Patryk
automatyzacji
Stańczak,
pracy widzą Państwo
owing to the increase in the customer awareness when it comes to growing automation, do you see any price pressures? The question is the passage to the output-based model might be an answer to that, and do these models differ from the current one, for instance, fixed time? Sebastian, would you like to take that question? Yes, I can. Generally, the difference between fixed price and an outcome base is that in the case of fixed price, we take the responsibility for the end result of a given project. And when it comes to outcome based, it means that we take responsibility for the KPIs. So to be able to offer an outcome-based approach to the customer, the provider has to have very profound domain knowledge. And this is our competitive advantage. As you will know, at Spyro, we've been basing our growth on industry awareness and know-how rather than just technological competences. We have a very good result. Good basis for that. In the case of outcome based, we don't settle by the hour. When it comes to outcome-based, there is some risk level depending on how quickly we perform the project. All the fixed models are based on AI. We can deliver them quicker, but we have to keep in mind that AI is slowly becoming a standard approach, and the budgets will be naturally decreasing because we will be delivering software in a quicker and more streamlined way, which will save the customer's budget and at the same time um, also open to new solutions. What I think is also important is to be able to provide different solutions to the customer, because the customer will not be likely to agree to outcome-based because it takes some intimacy of knowing the provider. So I think the value curve that we can offer to the customer is, in my opinion, unique because not every company, such as Spyro, has enough industry know-how, and in many areas, such as automotive or finance, we are a very significant player. Thank you very much. The next question from Patrick. In analyzing the results of for Q4, you can observe the decrease of the share of BBC in the revenues and also a weaker operating results of Spyrosoft UK. Can these questions be maintained? And also another one.
To mogę ja odpowiedzieć.
I can take that question partially. Konrad, you can support me. The BBC contract can be perceived as a 5-year contract, and there's a defined budget for the whole of 5 years, and the customer confirms the annual budget that cannot excess 5 years. They have to stick to the frame. And depending on the customer needs, that budget will be growing or decreasing, but it doesn't decrease by 70 or 50%. It only drops by a dozen percent or so, but next year it might be even higher than it was in 2025. So we don't see any threat for the project to finish before the 5-year period, where we still get signals from BBC that we are a splendid provider. To complement what Wojtek has said, I don't think it makes sense to speculate on what's going to happen. We should stick to the fact the value of the contract with BBC is defined. We try to obtain new contracts with BBC. BBC is obviously not in the best financial shape, which is universally known. What makes sense to focus on is the ability of replacing one contract with another by our UK colleagues, and the potential contract towards a survey would be a good step. But we take part in many public tenders in the UK, and I'm cautiously optimistic when it comes to that. If you're asking whether we expect a significant drop in the revenues in the UK, that's not the case. Another question, does it mean the expansion of the cooperation or continuation of what we can already see? Frankly speaking, it's hard for me to combine the first part of the question with the latter, but I'll try. Yes, it is a continuation and expansion. And when it comes to the revenue level, please mind you that this contract is not signed yet. The information that we have is that our proposal, our bid, has been considered to be the most advantageous. Once signed, we can treat it as certain. So far, it's hypothetical, but the contract value is defined and the scope of work is known because we've been cooperating with this company for the past 10 years, since the inception of our company. So the start is also defined, it's 2027, so we can take the maximum amount divided by the number of years, and simple mathematics will enable us to conclude on the revenue level.
To jeszcze pytanie pana Patryka. Jaki
Question
ciąg
from
pracy z
Patrick.
polską instytucją
How
finansową?
is the cooperation doing with the Polish
finansową?
financial
Dobrze,
institution?
rozwijać.
Polish financial institution? Good.
Jeszcze jedno pytanie.
It's growing
Odnośnie tego
stronger.
mówił panie
Okay,
prezesie,
another question.
zarządzający spółkami tworzącymi
The
oprogramowanie są bardzo optymistycznie nastawieni do zmian związanych z AI, bo spadek cen
the managers of
popytu.
software developers are very optimistic,
Pomysłów, które wcześniej
and the unblocking of many ideas
budżetów.
that there were no budgets for.
Się martwi, że szeroki rynek
Patrick
eksportu widzi zgołąbienie i będzie
is
liczył
worried
na
that
to,
the broad market perceives this market totally differently. Where is the truth? Just don't say it. It's in the middle. I think the truth is in a different understanding of this issue.
Moja teza jest taka,
That's my thesis.
że
My thesis is that
jeżeli mówimy o
if we're talking about
które,
solutions
nazwijmy to, są tak
that,
zwane
shall I
SaaS,
say,
prawda? Nazwijmy to
are
SaaS, ale to w szerokim
SaaSs,
pojęciu.
but
Mamy
in
jakieś
a very broad
rozwiązanie,
meaning. We have some solution,
oprogramowanie, które ma zestaw
a software that
funkcjonalności,
has
na
a
przykład
set of
system ERP.
functionalities. For instance,
Wdrożenie
ERP.
takiego systemu jest
The
długotrwałe,
implementation of such a system takes a lot of time
Najczęściej
and money.
użytkownicy takiego systemu nie
More often
korzystają
than
z
not,
tej funkcjonalności, ale w
the
opłacie
users of such a system
licencyjnej płacą
don't use all the functionalities, but in the license fees, they pay for all the features that it has. And I think that such companies that are offering such solutions will be facing major problems because as the AI as a technology progresses, we'll be able to deliver something that is tailor-made. So practically each customer, even the smaller one, will be able to afford an ERP system doing exactly what they want, and it will cost them $100,000 for any number of workstations. It will be much cheaper, and it will be doing exactly what they want. This is the segment that we are entering, and we will be able to offer that. It's our challenge to acquire a large number, to win a large number of customers, to be able to consolidate those 100,000 amounts into several millions. It will not happen overnight. Mind you that all the pillars that we've discussed in our strategy is growing. It's not that we can see any challenge. So far, we have not a single customer who would come and say that they don't want to do want to cooperate with us because now they have AI. We're talking about a future in 2-3 years' time, depending on the segment. I believe that investors are trying to implement a very complex IT landscape composed of many geographies to something that is very simple, because they have to make a simple decision on whether to put the money in or not. But it's a very complex issue. But if I were to pinpoint those who will be facing problems, these are SaaS providers and out-of-the-box solutions. We can see that right now we can do something on a tailor-made basis. The downside for us is that we won't be able to earn a lot of money on a single solution. I hope this answers your question, but should you have any more detailed questions, I can see that Sebastian wanted to add something. Yes, just wanted to add to what you said, Konrad, is that I also suggest that you take a look at Gartner's hype cycle, showing how expectations grow when it comes to new technologies and how they evolve in time. And this shows that the two groups that you mentioned have totally different expectations. There's a group that perceives it as a major opportunity, others as a threat. But I suggest that you take a look at the new technology, because each new technology aroused a lot of expectations. Then they were just taken down to the ground, and then something was happening. I think that in the case of AI, the situation will be similar, but in my opinion, we are at the growing wave, of high expectations of the
Też
technology
jeszcze
or the market.
uzupełniając
And to
uzupełnienie,
add something more to the addition to the addition,
sytuację, że
um,
bardzo
the situation is,
powiedzieć wprost, jesteśmy gotowi na takie
let me just put
rozwiązanie,
it straightforwardly, that we are ready for a solution
ponieważ koszty jego
where
wytworzenia
we
są
provide
bardzo bliskie
the
zerowe.
solution
Jako firma jesteśmy
for
w
free
stanie
because
taki model
the
biznesowy
development
finansować.
costs
Jakie
are
problemy
close
są
to
pojawione?
zero.
Pierwszy problem jest taki, że technologia
We
na
can do it
dzisiejszy
as a
etap
company. What is the problem with that? Is that
lata przypadkowo póki
firstly,
co,
the technology
prowadzi
does
do
not
takiego
enable
zbierania treści
that.
danego
Maybe
typu,
in
aż ostatecznie okazywała się,
70%
że jednak
of cases it
raz
would,
jeszcze potrzeba
but
robienia czegoś
we've tried to do it, but
i
it
to
turns out
sklepować.
that you
Także
need
technologia jeszcze nie jest na tym
involve
nawet
the
jeżeli byśmy
human
ją
factor. So the technology is not
nas to
ready
nie
for that.
powoduje
Even if a
żadnego
technology is there,
problemu, bo my
it's
mamy
not a
rozwiązania,
problem for us
które
because we have
ze względu na
solutions
to, że będziemy
that
oferować
owing to the
tańszy
fact that
oraz
we'll be
płynniejszy cykl
proposing
wdrażania i
consulting and the
komercjalizacji
further
oprogramowania, one
cycle of
są
implementation and
bardzo
commercialization,
jesteśmy na tym
we
bardzo dobrze
are
znani.
prepared
Natomiast
to
przez
offer
chwilę też budowaliśmy
software for
obserwatorium,
free. We will
które
still be making money on that. But
dzieli nas od tej
mind you,
pewności
what
sporo czasu,
Sebastian has
natomiast
mentioned,
jako
we are still a lot of time
zapraszamy niektórzy
away from
inwestorzy
that, despite
pierwszymi ofiarami
the
nowych
expectations of
korporacyjnych
some
zasad, takie
people.
właśnie jak
And the
SaaS,
first
takie rozwiązania
victims of that might be
domowe, ale to też jest
SAS or out of the box solution providers. They might
I
or
teraz
might
tutaj
not.
pan Przemysław Staniszewski pyta, jaka jest obecnie sytuacja
Along the same
rynkowa technologii
thread, what
Spyrosoft w 2025
Przemysław Staniszewski is asking, what is
2026?
the
Jest
significance of a
dosyć
software
duże. Można
segment
liczyć, że
in
taki potencjał
2025 and
wzrostu ma powyżej
2026?
50%.
It's a lot.
Przyjrzyjmy się jakoś
I'd
istotnie.
have to calculate it. I think it's around 50%, and it's not going to change
Proszę wziąć pod
significantly.
uwagę
Mind
czynnik,
you,
który jest
what I mean,
nieprzewidywalny.
please pay
Systemy,
attention to the
weźmy pod uwagę, że są
human
szerokie firmy,
factor that
które
is
są
reluctant
przecież
to change.
wielkie
These are
budżety na pewne
major
rozwiązania. To,
companies
co
that
idzie
are
gdzieś indziej,
prepared
to
for,
są wielkie
that are
firmy.
accustomed to major
Potrzebne to
budgets.
jest kluczowe.
What if something doesn't, what if it doesn't work out? What if someone has to take responsibility? This is a significant factor. We are
Coś, co jest
able to
kilka
manufacture
razy
something that
tego,
is
co
two lengths ahead of what the customers are ready to absorb at this moment.
Dziękuję. To jeszcze
Thank
pan
you.
Jarosław Gadomski
Jarosław
wracając
Gadomski,
do
let's come back to the human factor.
jakie jest
What
przekonywanie,
is
czy
the
przekonywanie i
conviction,
motywacja pracowników w zakresie
or
korzystania
how
z
do you
AI jest właśnie
persuade
wyzwaniem,
uh,
jak wykorzystanie AI jest promowane i wdrażane w takich spółkach jak
employees?
Spyrosoft?
So, how is
Nie
the
wiem, jak jest
implementation
w
of
innych
AI
spółkach. U nas każdy
promoted
sposób,
and implemented
każdy
to
jest
such companies and
Ja też sobie
Spyrosoft? I
zdaję
don't know about
sprawę z
other
promocji firmy w zakresie
companies,
AI, ponieważ
but at
pracownik ma teraz
Spyrosoft,
dostęp do
each staff
narzędzi,
member
które umożliwiają
has
wykorzystywanie
access to the
AI
tool owing to our
w sposób
cooperation.
Tak,
Uh,
my bardzo
they all
mocno
have
śledzimy
tools
wykorzystanie
to
chętnych,
that. Yes,
trendy, jak to się
we
zmienia w czasie. Bardzo
track
merytorycznie do tego
the use
podchodzimy.
of
Tak,
licenses,
raporty
trends.
premiera po
We
wpisie w osobę z back-office.
track it in detail. So
Tylko
it's
teraz jest
used by everyone,
dystrybucja
from an
tego, są
engineer
różne wyzwiska
to a
tego
back
typu
office person.
rozwiązań. Są
The
branże,
question
które
is whether we can use
są
such
branże, są
solutions. There
tytułowe i na
are
przykład te
industries where
rozwiązania
we
już nie
cannot,
funkcjonują.
or
Otóż
such
podstawowe
companies where
rozliczenia
those
są
solutions don't apply.
standardowe,
But
co
when it comes to the
zapłaci za
theoretical
ograniczenie,
availability,
nie chciałbym,
anyone
żeby
can
to
use it.
źle zabrzmiało, ale
The
ograniczeniem wykorzystania tej
limitation in
technologii
practice
są w dużej
is
części klienci, natomiast
are
myślę, że to jest dosyć
largely
stały się konsens
attributable
wśród
to the
osób, które
customers. But
faktycznie tej dynamiki
frankly
transformacyjnej
speaking,
się
it
boją,
depends on the person. There are people who are
przestają się obawiać.
enthusiastic about such
Tak
solutions.
jak
Some people are afraid. It's a process. But
Sebastian
as mentioned
przedstawiał
by
bardzo dokładnie sposób
Sebastian,
oceniania, kto
Sebastian
używa
has a very exact way of
też
measuring
musimy
who's using
uznać,
that,
że
how they're
jeżeli
using that, and we have to be
transformuje
careful
się, to akurat
to
było
avoid
niedawno parę
an
takich się
absurd
znalazło,
solution, as in
zmieniające
several
kształt
companies,
życia tej
where the
technologii,
use of this
ludzie nie
technology
dokonają jej
is
dlaczego? Żeby tylko zademonstrować
is
zarządowi, że coś
enforced.
z tym robią.
People use
Też nie wierzę w
anything
coś
they
takiego,
just
coś
anything
co
to
tylko
show
mówi.
to the board that they are doing something about it.
Pozostańmy chwilę
That's
przy
not the
AI.
way.
Kolejne
Okay,
pytanie
let's
pana
stick to
Przemysława
AI. Another
Gadomskiego.
question from Mr.
Zmienia się
Badomski.
rodzaj pracy lub projektów, jakie
Does
realizujecie?
the
Czy
adoption of AI
projekty
change the kind
opracowane
of
podczas
work or
implementacji
projects that we're
algorytmu
working on?
AI wytworzą
Are there any
firmy?
projects connected with the patches, fixes, or AI code optimization?
Nie wiem, czy dobrze zrozumiałem to pytanie.
I'm not sure if I
Jeżeli
understood
chodzi
this
o
question correctly,
kod
but
wytworzony
when
przez
it comes
ludzi,
to the code developed
to
by
tego rodzaju
humans,
rozwiązania AI-owe nie
right
są
now,
najlepsze
AI
w
solutions are not the
na
best
przykład analizie tego kodu
in
i
analyzing that code
dodawaniu do niego poprawek.
and
Mówiliśmy o
adding
takich systemach, które
fixes or
prawdopodobnie
patches to
to
it. If we're talking
gdzieś tam
about
zostały
some
skopiowane.
systems
W tej chwili te rozwiązania
that have been
raczej
implemented,
to
so
w niektórych przypadkach działają, ale nie są najlepiej
these solutions are not the best. I think there was also a question whether we are confronted with such institutions where we take over the code developed by AI. I think that was the question, and I think it will still take some time, but we already getting such queries that the customer has developed something. It's great, it's working nicely, but how to implement it, how to ensure scalability, then such situations can happen, and those customers contact us, and these are the additional fields of use that Konrad mentioned. So before, the customer was not able to code anything, and right now, if they take Claude or anti-gravity, we can just agent your own system. But so what if it's not fully scalable? You don't know if it's safe and secure, and then it just creates new fields of revenues for such companies as Spyro, because we don't despise any project, even the smallest ones. Question from Mr. Staniszewski from Stockwatch: which geographies should be the the strongest, and can this also
No na ostatnie pytanie Sebastian odpowiedział,
well
bo nawet miał strzałkę, która tak...
stem from the from can we expect any drop in the revenues from the BBC? Well,
oraz Stany Zjednoczone.
Sebastian has already answered the last question because the arrow was slightly down. When it comes to the geographies, we don't expect any major changes. It's UK, DACH, and US. And when it comes to the technologies, I would expect a major share of such markets that used to be let's put them poorer, couldn't afford to spend on software. Right now, they will be able to do so. This includes Polish customers. As our economy grows, we also expect this. Okay, but in 2026, this should pay attention. Okay, let's pass on to the financials.
Zwrot podatku, o który wystąpiliście w czwartym kwartale 2025.
Which tax years does the R&D tax credit apply to the tax refund you requested in Q4 2025? Are there any unclaimed credits that you will be applying for in 2026? I understand it's 2025 and something else. Well, in 2025, other than 2025 that was settled on an ongoing basis, that we will obtain the cash in 2026. We applied for the cash credit for 2021 in 3 companies, and that's the only outstanding year. And as of 2026, we'll be only dealing with the current year. Another question from Mr. Staniszewski on finance. I'd like to ask about financial costs that increased significantly in Q4, 3 million zlotys. What does it stem from? It's mostly forex differences because the interest is at the unchanged level, and the additional financial cost stems from the consolidation of the P&L with Karamus. That's $400,000. Kamil Rogacki has a question on our financial goals that will move us towards the strategy. How do you understand the maintenance of the financial goals in 2026 from the previous strategy? Does that mean that you expect the revenues to grow from 25 to 33% CAGR in the brackets of 25, 36, the latter, 32, the latter? But when it comes to the increase in revenues next year, we hope for it to be a double-digit increase. And the last 15 minutes of our meeting and a couple of questions on the strategy, but I think you can combine them into one. Can you ask to develop the topic of the financial, of the strategic investment? Given the splendid results for last year, why contemplate such an investor, or can you find such an investor
until the end
Okej,
here.
jeżeli
Several
chodzi o
questions in
to,
one, but it's actually about the same. The question about the why. We need a strategic investor in the longer run because this model, we obviously know that AI will be transforming this business to a greater degree. It might not do it overnight, not this year, maybe not next year, but it will in several years' time. And the moment it does, we will need to invest in those changes by acquiring entities, as mentioned by Sebastian, in places that are attractive to us to be closer to the customer. And you will need more money. That's the first thing. Secondly, you need to invest into IP. This will also involve a lot of financial outlays. Another thing, if you think about what will be happening in several years' time, how client winning will look like in our industry and what the cash flow will look like, well, we'll be probably spending much more money to win customers because you need to have more of them. It will be a different model. You need to spend more money for that. And if we pass on to a subscription-based model to a larger degree, which is very likely, the money spent will come back to us in the next periods. Frankly speaking, it doesn't mean that now we'll start paying the dividend, but at one moment, the investors will probably expect us to pay the dividend. We also need cash for the dividend. If we combine all of that, it makes sense to think about that. It will make sense to find an investor to support us in financial terms. And like I mentioned, major international public exchanges don't seem to be the best option, but we have 3 years. Anything can happen. So we're moving towards the private markets. I also saw the question why we didn't manage to find an investor last year since we have such splendid results. Mind you, that it wasn't our goal to find an investor, it was to determine which way to go. If we had found an investor on the way, it would have been okay, but it wasn't our priority. And now, in talking to various investors, I assume that they will be having the same doubts as you have. Will AI transform the business? What will look like? So it might be a lengthy process because those doubts will be lingering. On the other hand, we are very much certain of what we have achieved already, and even more certain that we can do much more. So, in seeking the investor, we will not
Czy to byłby
be
inwestor
valuing our
zarządzony
customer
technologicznie, czy raczej inwestor finansowy,
in a
który
low
wpuściłby
way
w państwa obrotę
because we know that it's very well, it's worth very well. Would it be an industry or a financial one? We don't exclude anything. I think
na wszystkie, jeśli nie, to
the
proszę
CEO
napisać
has
na
answered all the questions about the strategy.
Przeglądam jeszcze, czy są nowe pytania, które
Please
dotyczyły
let us
czynszego
know if
sztabowego.
there's anything that hasn't been answered. I'm
Nie?
just
Były
reviewing the
wątpliwości
question.
rynek
Okay,
akwizycji. Czy
what
spółka
does the
widzi szansę
acquisition
na
market
pojawienie
look
się
like right
w
now?
bieżącym roku?
Does the company
Czy skala
see any
wzrostu
opportunity
niemieckiej, czy
for
jakiś
next
inny
acquisitions this year? If so, will it be the scale of of Caramels, the German company, or smaller or higher? We had to change the strategy and switch it to another track. So hence, probably there will be there won't be numerous acquisitions in 2026. But if we were to look at any acquisitions, these
Cezary
will be
Maliszewski to poseł
more
pytanie
likely
odnośnie, czy potrzeba
smaller
wprowadzenia
acquisitions.
inwestora strategicznego
Cezary
w
Maliszewski is
możliwe
asking
ryzyka, aby również potrzeby staszowania się obecnych właścicieli.
asks whether the need to find a financial investor would stem from the necessity to cash out by the
Ponowna pierwsza
current
część pytania
investors. I
dotyczyła
think it will
dobrego
be
kapitału
a
inwestora. Czy dobrze rozumieć, że
nice
kapitał zewnętrzny inwestora miał być
detail
potencjalnie częściowo
on top of
przeznaczony na
that.
dywidendy?
And now, do you think the capital acquired would be partially appropriated to dividends? No, that was not the point. The thing is that each company should start paying the dividend at some moment. It's not that we want to attract an investor to be able to pay the dividend. That's not the case. If we just look at the capital needs of the company in the perspective of 3 years or further, at some moment we will have to start paying the dividend, and it will be combined with further outlays on IP transfer to the new business model. Hence, we need a financial investor or another investor. It
Pan
could be an industry
przewodniczący
investor.
przewiduje, czy w długim
Stanisław
okresie uważa pan, że
Staniszewski is
dzięki
asking,
AI,
in the
czy w
long
długim
run, do you
okresie
think
podniesie wartość
that
grupy, czy
AI
odwrotnie?
will increase the group value
Podniesie.
or otherwise? It will. Yes, it will increase it.
To tutaj jeszcze jedna wątpliwość do
One
wyjaśnienia.
more
Pojawiły
doubt
się informacje o
to
opcji
be
delistyngu
clarified.
po uzyskaniu
There have
inwestycji
been
zagranicznego. Co pan na to powie?
there has been some information on the delisting option,
Nie chciałbym
having
komentować
obtained
spekulacji.
strategic investor. What would you say about this?
Kolejne pytanie naszego
No
inwestora
comment.
zagraniczny.
I wouldn't like to comment on
Would
that.
it make sense to wait until the
Another
consolidation of the
question.
entities in 2028 before bringing in the strategic investor, given that EBITDA margins will be higher in 2027 and the entry multiples will be higher? Czyli pytanie o to, czy nie poczekać na lepszą wycenę.
Okay, so it's okay if I answer in English, I guess. So I don't think that actually EBITDA will be higher because we consolidate most of it. So that's the reason number one. And the second reason is that we see these things independently because when you think about the way the group is growing, we actually grow by setting up new businesses with people who know something we don't. And we plan to continue this model. If you look at our reports, we have set up new companies. Okay, we did it in 2025. We'll probably do it in 2026 as well. So it is a model that we use, develop the company. We will keep doing that. Okay, so there will always be something to consolidate. So we cannot wait for the final consolidation because the consolidation in 2028 is related to majority of our companies, but definitely not all of them. There will always be something to consolidate. So it's an ongoing process. So we'll not wait with the finding of the strategic investor until the final consolidation.
Pan Michał Paul, jakie kwoty konkretnie Państwo
Michał
potrzebują
Paul.
na rozwój? O jakim wielkości
What
Państwo myślą, jeśli chodzi o
amount
inwestora?
are you do you specifically need?
Myślimy
What
o
level of magnitude are you contemplating when it comes to the investor?
setkach
We're talking about
Znaczy, tu
tens
mówimy o
or
potrzebach
hundreds of
milionów
millions when it
złotych,
comes to the company's
ceny za którą
strategic
byśmy
needs,
sprzedawali.
not
Są to grube dziesiątki milionów. Jak Państwo sobie
not not
to
the
nawet inaczej sobie
amount for which we will be selling the company. These are
te kwoty
thick,
wykraczają
really
kilka
large
milionów.
dozens of millions. So this extends what we have
Staram się
as
te
free
wszystkie pytania
cash.
powiedzieliśmy.
I'm wondering
Pojawiły
if
się
we
nowe
have
rzeczy o
answered
inteligencji, ale zdaje się,
all
że
the
już
questions.
przerwaliśmy.
There are new questions about AI, but I think
Tutaj jeszcze
we've already handled them.
w
Perhaps
kwestii rozdawania oprogramowania za darmo.
when it comes to
Wróćmy w erę,
giving
kiedyś weszło
software for
automotive,
free,
znak zapytania,
we're entering
czyli
an
oferujemy tanio,
era
ale zarabiamy na
where
zawieszeniu
the
hostingu,
automotive
konsultacji. Czy tak to ma wyglądać?
once entered. So we
Bardzo
manufacture
możemy
cheap, but we earn on
Proszę Państwa,
hosting.
nowych pytań, na które nie
Is that
odpowiedzieliśmy, nie widzę. Zdaje się, że
what it would be?
wszystkich już
Yes,
uzupełniliśmy w
in a very
zagospodarowaniu.
simplified way,
Zdaję
yes.
sobie
I
ostatnie
can see
15 sekund na to,
no
żeby zebrać
new
myśli
questions, so
Chyba
let's
jedno
give.
pytanie widzę.
I think we
Tak,
have one more question. Yes.
To ja odczytam może, bo
Okay, let me
już
just
o
read
tym
it.
mówiliśmy,
I think
ale
we've
chodzi o
already
rosnący
discussed it, but let me
rozwój.
just
Czy
read
o
it.
tym
Paweł
uważają,
Węgierski, do you believe
Państwo, że prawdopodobnie
that
wpływ sztucznej
most probably
inteligencji
the impact
pozwoli
of AI will
spowodować
remain
zmiany w modelu operacyjnym
insignificant
oraz
when it comes to
zracjonalizować
changes to the
działalność,
operating
które obecnie
model
bieżąco
and the way of
Rozumiem,
doing your
że
business
chodzi
that you
o
are
wpływ na wyniki finansowe.
implementing? I understand this is
Myślę,
about the
że
impact on
zależy
financial
od
results. I think it depends
dużo
on
parametrów, na które patrzymy.
the parameters that
Jeżeli
we're
chodzi o przychody,
looking at.
to
When it comes to revenues,
ten model, który przewidujemy,
if the model that we are envisaging, it's just one of
wejdzie w
the
życie, to tempo
likelihoods, one of the probabilities, then
oraz
the
tempo wzrostu
level of
zysku powinno wzrosnąć.
increases of
Natomiast będą
revenues will
wymagania
drop,
istotne, na przykład
but
ze względu na to,
the
że
rate of growing profit
jakby
will be growing. But
przychody
there will be
będą
some changes, some challenges for the cash flow because
Natomiast tak jak
revenues might grow
nikt nie wie tak
I mean,
naprawdę.
profits will be
Niektórzy
growing
przewidujemy,
faster,
że tak.
but not the revenues. I mean, nobody knows that. It's just an
To
expectation.
jeszcze pytanie dotyczące
One more
przejęcia
question
tutaj
about the takeover.
nasz inwestor zagraniczny zgłasza
Alright.
ryzyko, które dostrzega.
There's a risk.
Nie ma ryzyka, że spółka zostanie przejęta tanio i to będzie
Is there no risk that the
inwestorów
company will be
indywidualnych.
taken over
Inwestorzy
cheaply and
indywidualni
it
będą
will
tym
be
krzywdzeni.
individual investors not be harmed by
Nie wiem, w jaki sposób mogliby
I don't know in which way
indywidualni
individual investors might be harmed
inwestorzy, jak
because
to się
both
określa,
major
taka
investors as well as
systemowa
minor
sytuacja,
investors have the
jeżdżą
same
na tym samym wózku.
class of stocks, and we're in the same
Nie,
boat.
nie widzę takiego scenariusza, kiedy ktoś,
I
kto jest
can't
większym
envisage
shareholderem,
a scenario where someone
pokrzywdzony.
who's a minority
Chyba, że wszyscy byli
shareholder
pokrzywdzeni.
might be harmed, unless
Tego też
everyone is
nie można
harmed,
wykluczyć.
which cannot be also excluded.
Mamy kolejne pytanie
We
jeszcze
have a next
dotyczące
question
wątku inwestora. Tutaj
about
pojawia
the
się cały
investor.
argument
There's a
za to,
whole
że
number of
spółka
investors
generuje
on why
cash,
that the company
że
generates cash flows,
jest w stanie sama finansować
that
swój
it can
rozwój i ewentualne
fund its own
dywidendy z rynkowych
development,
wygląda to trochę
and the
tak, jakby
development from
zarząd
the side.
zależało na wejściu
From the
inwestora,
outside, it
rzeczą
looks a bit
nieruchomości, zwalność akcji, co
as if the
można
management
zrobić
is
po
keen on
cash out,
bringing
co powoduje
in an
rentowność
investor to increase the
nieruchomości.
liquidity and marketability of
Globalnie
the
faktor na dziś
shares,
płynność.
which would
Myślę, że
enable the
każdy ma prawo
aforementioned
do
cash out, because from the capital liquidity perspective, the company is actually over liquid as of today. Well, everyone has the right to their own
Dobrze, proszę
opinions,
państwa.
and I respect that.
Czy są jeszcze pytania?
Any other questions?
O, jest pytanie.
Okay, we have a
O
question
finansowanie bankowe.
about
Czy zamiast
bank
inwestora
funding. Would the
spółka rozważa
company
uzyskania
consider
kredytów?
obtaining loans instead of finding an investor? Yes, this was part of the strategic option considered.
Okej.
Okay,
Proszę państwa, nie ma więcej
no
pytań.
further questions.
Doskonale. Dziękuję
Thank you very
uprzejmie państwu za
much,
udział w naszym
Konrad
spotkaniu. Pan
Weisske,
Konrad Weisske, prezes zarządu.
Wojciech
Dziękuję
Bodaruś,
bardzo.
and this is Sebastian
Wojciech Bodaruś
Łękawa.
oraz pan
Thank you very
Sebastian
much.
Łękawa.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Dzięki.
So
Proszę państwa, my jak
we'll
zawsze widzimy
see
się na
you
spotkaniu ze spółką
at a
w
meeting with the
kolejnym
company
kwartale. Jeszcze
following
coś
the
się
next
dzieje,
quarter. If
będziemy
something
na
happens,
bieżąco.
you'll be informed on an
Dziękuję
ongoing
za udział w
basis.
naszym
Thank you very
spotkaniu.
much
Do
and goodbye.
widzenia, do zobaczenia.